Day 1 of testing is done and dusted, and by the time you're watching this, Day 2 will probably be over as well. While we haven't seen the true performance of any of the cars yet, we have had a good chance to look at the changes made during the off-season. There have been some shocks, and there have definitely been some losers, but there are also a couple of winners out there on track. Want to know how your favourite team has been performing? Then stick around for the rest of the video. To start with, I'm going to give the standard disclaimer. The timing sheet means absolutely nothing at this point. Teams are doing testing, running their cars in a variety of setups and on different tyres. No one is trying to set the fastest time or prove anything. Don't worry, Mercedes fans, Max Verstappen sitting at the top of the timing sheet all day doesn't mean anything yet. Speaking of Mercedes, they are definitely the place to start. 12 months on from its troubled test in Bahrain, where the German car manufacturer was plagued by excessive porpoising, the team seemed in a much happier place with its car. And although lap times were largely irrelevant as teams focused their initial efforts on getting an early understanding of their cars, Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff said early feedback from George Russell was promising. "It seems to be balanced in the right way," said Wolff. "There's no bouncing, which is good news, apart from the big bump at the end of the straight. It's a good starting point. We are gathering a lot of data because that was important to correlate obviously after last year and trying different things. It seems the footage of Hamilton bouncing at Silverstone was misleading after all. While all teams were facing far fewer bouncing issues than last year, bumps on the Sakhir track at the ends of straights were triggering some unwelcome car movement. However, the issue with the bumps was totally different from the porpoising characteristics that proved to be such a headache last year. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur said, "It's not at all as it was 1 year ago with the car bouncing like a kangaroo. Today we have some parts of the track, before turn 1 and turn 12. It's a bit more bumpy than it was before, but it's a different issue." Fred is correct that the bouncing isn't anything like it was last year, but the Ferrari did look like it was still having some bouncing at places, not just at turn 1 and 12. Sainz was spotted bouncing heavily at the Bahrain International Circuit on Thursday morning. The Spaniard spent the morning running a medium-load rear wing, which looked to have been designed to bring Ferrari closer to Red Bull in terms of drag and straight-line speed. But that straight-line speed, the Spaniard clocked at 325 miles an hour compared to Max Verstappen's 326 in the morning, meant Ferrari struggled with porpoising. Sky Sports pundit Anthony Davidson thought that Ferrari were deliberately trying to see how close to the ground they get before reaching the limits of porpoising. Certainly nothing to worry about just yet, but if Anthony is wrong, then Ferrari could be a big loser. Ferrari caused more of a stir when their nose started to depress at high speeds. It got this big spot in the front and there was plenty of speculation about what it was there for. In the end, it turned out that someone just forgot to fit a brace in the nose. Exactly the kind of thing you would expect from Ferrari, and it was very funny. Things in the Red Bull garage went far smoother, with Max Verstappen taking to the track for both sessions and looking incredibly confident in the RB19. He was pushing far more often and far harder than the other drivers on track, as Red Bull had an almost faultless testing day. They looked like huge winners out on track, which is bad news for everyone else on the grid. Unsurprisingly, the car that dominated last season seemed relatively similar to the one that crossed the line in Abu Dhabi before Christmas. The RB19 is definitely a small evolutionary step, not a leap in another direction like a couple of other teams. There were small changes across the car, including the front wing end plate wings that Merc and Haas were also sporting. The side pod undercut was more aggressive, and the floor edge gained lots of complexity, showing that the team have spent lots of time refining over the winter, not innovating. So what about the rest of the grid then? There are another 7 Formula 1 teams after all. Well, let's make our way down the 2022 Constructors' Championship results, which means starting with Alpine. Technical Director Matt Harmon started the testing days by saying that the A523 was going to be one of the lightest cars on the grid. "We've had a very aggressive weight reduction program, and it's really pleasing to be able to say that the car will be underweight this year. The team can now place ballast across the chassis to make the minimum weight, but the positioning can help determine car balance to assist the drivers, an option rivals struggling with weight will not be able to exploit. That is definitely a win." McLaren did not start the season anywhere near as well. If you remember testing last season, they had a huge problem with their brake cooling that completely hamstrung their testing, and the first few races as well. Things weren't quite as bad in Bahrain on Thursday, but the cracks that were appearing in the front wing deflectors were a serious worry. Heat guns and metallic tape were deployed, and a couple of hours later the car was patched up and ready to go, but it took half a session to sort. Wasting testing time is never a good thing, so we're going to call McLaren losers, but only small ones. Finishing in 6th place last season was a good result for Alfa Romeo, and they will be hoping to move forward from that this season. Bottas rocking the mullet and mustache combo probably won't have an effect on the car's performance, but it definitely earned him points from us. Something that will affect the car's performance is the team's choice to switch their suspension setup to match Red Bull's, which can only be a good thing for the team. Looking at my notes from the day, I honestly have nothing else to say about Alfa, which is a surprise because I'm a fan of both drivers, but they really had an uneventful day, which is a win, I guess. Aston Martin have gained Fernando Alonso this year, which should be a win, but apparently his reliability issues last season weren't down to Alpine. He is just cursed. At the start of the day, his teammate Felipe Drugovich stopped on track with electricity issues causing a red flag. His steering wheel was having problems and the screen just blacked out, but they got it fixed and he was back out on track soon enough. Then, in the afternoon, Fernando stopped on track after the floor of the car was broken by the jack during pit stop practice. Honestly, you couldn't write it. And finally, Lance Stroll broke both his wrists in that bike accident earlier in the week and needed an operation on one of them. So yeah, Aston Martin are huge losers, I'm afraid. Next we have Haas, who also had an unremarkable day of running, but their car got lots of attention. They had the front wing end plate wings that Merc and Red Bull had. There was evidence they'd fitted something similar to Ferrari's S-duct as well. There were also loads of little innovations all over the car, including a cool looking cutout on the shark fin at the top and back of the car. If you just look at what happened on track, then perhaps we're neither winners or losers, but there are lots of interesting features on their car, which means they might be winners come next weekend. Not actual winners, but they might exceed expectations. I have as few notes about AlphaTauri as I do about Alfa Romeo, which should tell you everything you need to know. They just cracked on with testing without any obvious issues. Nick de Vries looked good in his first permanent Formula 1 seat as a 28-year-old. Fangio won a title as a 46-year-old, so he still has plenty of time to impress. Kind of. Team boss Franz Tost has certainly been impressed with his new driver. Nick de Vries is doing a really good job, said Tost. He's very experienced, you can see, and feel that he's 28 years old, and that he won a lot of races and championships. I think that our engineers got good technical feedback from his side, especially after the Abu Dhabi test, where he did a lot of laps, and where he, fortunately, complained a lot about the car. Because this was a wake-up call for the engineers. Perhaps he could be the driving force to get AlphaTauri back up the grid to where they really want to be. Finally, we have Williams, who had Logan Sargent behind the wheel as a replacement for Nicholas Latifi. As much as we love Latifi, there isn't an easier act to follow in Formula 1, and with Alex Albon by his side, Logan couldn't be in a better place. Williams had a great day that saw them hit a full race distance before anyone else on the grid, and genuinely looked like one of the better cars out there. That might not be worth much when it comes to next weekend, but the early signs are promising, and they were definitely winners for me. What was your takeaways from the first day of testing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and on your way down, don't forget to subscribe to get all the news as the new season begins. Until next time, drive safe and bye for now.